Okay, hello everyone. I think I am on. I should be on. Looks like it's good. I've got a good 29 frames per second, 7% CPU, good kilobits per second. Ooh, it's dropping frames. That's not good. Oh, 22% drop frames, and I'm not even on camera. So everyone let me know if you can see this properly and hear it properly. Hello, everyone in the chat. We got a couple things from Slamigo, but before then, play Mr. Dapperton's game. Super Dapperman versus the Furries. He just showed me a video of he put Donald Trump in one or more of the levels. It's funny because you can play against him, and Dapperton is saying a lot of things back to him, like, if I win, you have to build the wall. You have to pay for the wall. And then Slimy Goes says you should be more popular. One of the best ways to get popular on this platform is acting religious and making videos. But yeah, I bet as someone who's been making videos about atheism for a number of years, I bet you if I faked a conversion, because they always do that, they go, yay, we got one, we got it. Yeah, even though we've got zillions of theists who, of various stripes, Christians, Muslims, whatever, who became atheists, and we're like, cool. But with them, like, every single one is a victory. He says, my family quite literally gets mad at me for not being religious, and they say if you're not religious, you're evil and filled with dirty thoughts. I get that. Not for my family, though. My family's very good to me. SKM says, the algo does a disservice to anyone that is not either an extreme socialist or a theocratic dominist. Well, I'm not seeing it. Are people hearing me? Is this going out? Is it going live? Hello, I'm going to reload the chat. No? Chat, say something. Let me know. I'm going out. I'm sending out things. I'm just getting a ton of dropped frames. Okay, Dapperton says I'm going. Yeah, I don't know what all these dropped frames are. I'm not really fit to appear on video anyway. The reason why it was postponed from yesterday.
Oh, Dapperton's in the chat today.
Yep. And Dapperton, you know you have access. You can come on in the voice chat anytime you want. I know he doesn't normally live stream, though. Oh. Yeah, as soon I was doing fine. If this had been last week, it wouldn't have been a problem. But as soon as Helene came in and changed the weather on me, I was really bad yesterday. It was my mother-in-law looked at me and said, stay away from me, you're sick. I can tell him I'm not sick. I'm just in pain because the weather changed. Oh. It's better today, but it's not wonderful, which is why I'm not on camera. But I'm dropping frames anyway, so that's probably for the best.
Oh.
15%
yeah,
drop frames.
Don't let a federal agency though. Yeah, because he'll look at you and it's like, why? What's wrong with you? Why? What's wrong with you? Oh, I'm in pain because I had a really bad car accident years ago. So because of that, I will be dependent on pain medication for the rest of my life. Oh, so you're an addict? You're coming with me, sir.
Yep. That happens, believe it or not.
Yeah. It didn't happen to that one doctor where he got into a car accident and he suffered permanent spinal damage, which caused him catastrophic pain for all his life, and his doctor prescribed him a bunch of pain medicine to help him, and the DEA said, oh no, that's too much, he's clearly dealing, let's go take him away.
They just took the license away from like an 80-year-old doctor because he was prescribing prescription medicine, and they said he was redirecting it.
Yeah.
The people don't get it is like, if you're in that much pain, it affects you physically. It's just like being physically sick, and it's better today, but it's still, geesh.
That's the one thing I didn't like about that one episode of South Park with Hummels was the ending where, where he goes to the doctors and he starts blaming them. But then again, there's a possibility that maybe the whole point of that ending was was that kid was never going to give up the fight, so they just say, "Here, go take on someone else."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the overdoses are not the fault of doctors, not the fault of big pharma, not the fault of prescription opioids. It's black market fentanyl. Fentanyl
Yeah.
manufactured, distributed, and sold on the black market. But if anything, they're stepping things up. I mean, we thought things would get better after the CDC kind of went back on their 2016 recommendations, but nope. Too much invested in the drug war.
Yep, it's like what I told you about that death sentence in Texas about that guy for shaking baby syndrome. The only thing that's going to save him is a pardon from the governor, but the governor's pro death penalty. I'm pretty sure the reason why they're going to try to execute him anyway, even though there's a lot of evidence showing that he's probably innocent, is probably the good old fashioned lost sunk cost fallacy. Oh, we've already invested all this money and legal fees and all this to put him in jail. We can't just call it off now.
Well, and they executed that other guy in, where was it, Missouri? Even though there's all this evidence and DNA evidence that said it might not have been him. And, you know, the DA said don't kill him. The victim's family said don't kill him, and they killed him anyway.
Yeah.
Just abolish the death penalty. Because you can't ever go back on that. If you find out they're innocent after all, there's no going back. Hello, Sid.
Hey.
I think Robot Chicken did a parody that one time, you know, where there's a guy about to be electrocuted in the electric chair, and then a guy comes in and says, "Hey, we just got word from the governor. This man is innocent and he's been pardoned." And the guy's like, "Yay!" And then the guard's like, "Show of hands, kill him anyway."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fentanyl is not about prescription drugs, and it's not about immigrants at the border either. It's about the war on drugs. It's drug prohibition. That's the problem.
By the way, I was at Barnes & Noble today just browsing, looking at some books, and I saw a really cringy book today. It was called One State Under Guns, and it was a book by a guy who said how people misinterpret the Second Amendment and how our gun rights is going to destroy our democracy.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because he was one of those people that says the Second Amendment did not give individuals permission to own guns and all that. And I'm like, well, you clearly didn't read it then, because if you thoroughly read the Constitution, you yourself would know America is not a democracy and it was never supposed to be a democracy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd read the things that our founders wrote about democracy. They did not like democracies.
Yep.
And the Democratic Party today is exactly the kind of people they were worried about.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I guess both parties to an extent, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the Democratic Party in these last few years is just like last 10 years or so has just gotten really over the top.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, speaking of which, apparently, Biden's talking about an executive order banning 3D printed guns.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Good luck with that. Yeah. No, Colin Noir posted a funny video where Canada tried to go do a gun buyback, and they spent like close to like $37 million on it, and they didn't confiscate a single gun.
Wow. They didn't even have people turning in guns just to get the money, like quick homemade guns. Yeah. Because that's one thing you see a lot of. People will go to the hardware store with $50 and, you know, get the stuff and put together a slam fire shotgun, and then go to the gun back and get $200 or however much they're asking for it. Look at all these homemade guns we got off the. Look at all these homemade guns we got off the street. Yeah, good job.
Or in the case of that one, I think Oakland, I think Reason talked about it in one video, where they just bought a bunch of old useless guns that weren't worth near that amount, or
Yeah.
a bunch of gun retailers turned in all their useless stock.
Yeah, those guns that are old that have been there for years and they're never gonna get rid of them. So they're like, give them
Like
to the government.
junked guns that aren't good anymore. They won't fire, but they also don't have any historical or antique value, so they just want to get rid of them.
Yeah, that really old shotgun in the corner that hasn't been fired in over years.
Grandpa's old 110 that's rusted shut. Yeah, turn that one in.
Yeah, yeah, it's rusted. Yep, it's rusted shut, and you're like, well, why would you buy four anyway? It's like, makes a nice wall decoration.
No, it's taking up space. How can we get rid of it? Oh, they're doing a gun buyback. Okay. Is the chat frozen? Do I have to reload it? Oh, it was frozen. Okay. SKM says, I noticed that the news channels have nothing but positive feedback in their comment section for Kamala when they have them turned on.
Yeah.
How much do you admit they're manipulating? Of course, they're manipulating comments and ratings. Democrats are trying to become the PRI in Mexico. I guess that's the ruling party. God, I can barely talk. Humidity is like 97%. That I do not do well in high humidity. It's pretty much well established that low temperature, low barometric pressure, and high humidity exacerbate chronic pain and various other forms of pain as well. And it's not that low a temperature, but we've got the low barometric pressure and the high humidity, especially the humidity. But there are still quote unquote experts, mostly from like the CDC and from, what's that group's name? Prop, saying there's no scientific evidence linking bad weather to chronic pain. The fuck there isn't. We even know the mechanisms. Yeah, they're trying to just gaslight everyone and say, look how popular Kamala is. Oh, the economy's really great. Look at these. You're just imagining that you're worse off. And things. It's like, oh, look at our manipulated poll numbers. Look at how good Kamala's doing. Do you really think people are going to buy that? You don't win that way.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Oh,
economy
they had
has
a
very little to
dictatorship
do.
from 1930 to 2000 with a facade of democracy until they were dethroned by the pan. I don't know, from what I've heard, the ruling party now is pretty socialist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since every day has to be some kind of day, today is World Quantum Readiness Day. DigiCert said that because they want all of the websites and everyone to put post-quantum encryption into play, the hybrid protocols, so that today's transmissions will be protected from tomorrow's quantum computers. If they ever happen. Which every time it seems like we get big news, it ends up being nothing. It was like 20 years ago. They were saying, oh, yeah, by 2025, there's going to be quantum computers all over the place. Well, it's almost 2025 now.
Yeah, where's my quantum computer?
I think they just underestimated the major issues there are getting quantum computers going. And they also massively underestimated what GPUs are going to be able to do. Because look at what they're doing now. They're just incredible. Not just about playing games anymore. Not just about doing graphics. You got a good GPU, you can do all sorts of things because of the AI advances. Type Breitbart blocked me versus Media Matters blocked me. The former can be found. This is malice in my view, yeah. Elon's got that case about Media Matters. I got to sit down and catch up on that. There's like 10 briefs that have been thrown back and forth since I've had a chance to sit down and read about it. You're not that late, voluntary liberal. We started about 15 minutes ago, and we haven't really talked all about that
Yeah.
much.
Just about how much of an idiot Kamala Harris is.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm also trying to keep up on the AI cases since no one else on YouTube seems to be following them. And mostly it's nothing to report, but they're all basically going the same way. It's just going to be about, you used our data without permission when you trained it. Well, it's fair use. No, it isn't. And that's what the courts have to decide. Then Cadre v. Meta is going to be the big case on that one because it's the most advanced so far. The main thing seems to be that like Meta and OpenAI and places like that are just being sued for it in so many different states with virtually identical lawsuits. And it really just seems to be like lawfare, just make it so expensive for them to fight the case. That's what happened to Library. That's what happened to Remington.
Yep.
I don't think we've really talked about the Trump v. Harris debate. The main thing I have to say about that debate is, imagine you've got a boxing match, and it's the returning champion trying to take on the reigning champion. He's wanting to defend his title. And they've got two referees that are themselves heavyweight boxers. And as soon as the match starts, the two heavyweight boxers join the reigning champ in triple teaming the returning champ. Now, regardless of what happens after that, who won the match? I say the returning champ did, because the reigning champ lost as soon as she figured that she needed the two referees to join in on it. And that's how I saw the debate, because they were making points that Kamala was too dumb to make and arguing for her side. And SKM, speaking of manipulating ratings, YouTube was caught deleting dislikes on Biden inauguration a while back. How much of a stretch is it to think they're doing the same for comment votes? Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Maybe in the minority, but I think Harris technically won the debate. I guess it all depends on what you mean. I mean, in my analogy, The reigning champion won the match. But do you really win if you cheat?
Yeah. I mean, even Razorfist pointed this out. He did a recent video on this, and he said, "Listen, even if Kamala did genuinely win the debate and all that, let's be real here. Be real here. Here, those debates are bullcrap. You know, like it is the worst kept
they
secret.
were like constantly interrupting Trump, and he was having to debate the moderators, and they were saying, "No, that's not true." It's like, no, it is. Look at this and this and this.
Yeah. And as many people pointed out, like even if the things like with the Haitians eating pet are untrue, that should be Kamala's job to bunk him, not the moderator.
Yeah.
All that does is show that Kamala doesn't have a leg to stand on.
And she can't stand up for herself, that she can't debate her own side, and she needs help. And so how's she going to be president?
Yeah.
CNN disabled the comments on the original debate. They pretty much always disable comments, don't they?
I mean, I don't think Trump did a particularly good job even,
No, he did not. He did not bring his A game. He did not do the job he did with Biden. I think he was just underestimating her.
Yeah.
He has performed a lot better in debates in the past. Even after you consider what the moderators were doing. He was not taking that at all seriously, it was clear. Yeah, the moderator sold it for her, exactly. I heard Harris wants a second debate, but Trump has denied it. Yeah, because Trump is pretty much ahead. A debate is only going to be bad for the person who's ahead and good for the person who's behind, which is why she wants it. And it's also understandable why he wouldn't want another debate, given how he was treated in the last one.
Yeah,
and she wants a second debate, but she wants a debate in a format where the people on her side are on her side and where she can control things.
I'm not gonna lie, I've kind of given up. I've kind of lost hope in this upcoming election, to be honest.
Yeah. SKM has to go. We'll see SKM, his last comment. Human morality is 1/3 self-preservation, 1/3 empathy, and 1/3 logic. Anyone with the religious morality of God says so lacks all three traits. I think that last sentence got messed up. You might want to, if you're still here, you might want to clarify. No, I think anyone with their religious morality is this is moral or immoral because God says so is lacking in all three of those. I think that's what he's saying. In other words, but God says so in quotes. Because that's not self-preservation, that's not empathy, and that's not logic. It's a cop-out. And it's not really God says so. It's I say so because I'm going to say what God says. And yes, I'm going to point to the Bible, but I'm going to cherry pick the verses that I want to look at, and I want to interpret them in the way I want to interpret them. So it's just a cop-out. You're going to do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, there's a problem we're experiencing where a lot of people are saying the problem with why we have all these SJW stuff is because we don't go to church anymore, and I'm like, no, that's not the problem.
The problem is, even if they're not religious anymore, they're still authoritarians.
Yeah.
They just
mean, if
they
anything-
just changed God says so to government says so. That's all they did.
I mean, if anything, you know, Christians were the first, the religious, you know, the super fundamentalist religious people. They were the first social justice warriors.
Oh, absolutely. I've pointed out how, you know, the modern
Yeah.
SJW movement and third wave feminism and all that is basically Calvinism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Voluntary liberal says they read God saying, "Don't be drunk," and use it to justify locking a man in a cage for having weed. And they ignore the verse about forgiveness and love. How can you love someone and want to lock them in a cage? Just
Yeah.
because they lit a plant on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, God loves you very much. That's the reason why he deliberately made you to be flawed and imperfect, and then he sends you to hell because you don't constantly say how flawed and pathetic you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
But he loves you.
Yeah.
And he needs money.
Yeah. He makes you sick and demands that you be well, basically.
Yeah.
Or that's how Christopher Hitchens put it, I think, or
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah, I was doing the George Carlin thing. He
Yeah.
needs money. He's all powerful, all loving, all knowing, omnipresent, just not very good with money.
Yeah. Or Jesus says, well, the problem is that we do get lots of money, but for some reason those evangelists keep stealing it from me. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, what happened to Father TV guy? What happened to that you know new shelter for the poor we were going to construct? Oh well, we just didn't have enough money. Well, where'd the money go to? I don't know. Meanwhile, he has a Gulfstream jet in his garage.
Yeah. And gold-plated toilets.
Yeah.
I'm not making
Actually,
that up. That was actually a thing.
Yeah, there was that one evangelist who said who said, well, I needed to buy a Gulfstream jet because I have to travel the world to spread the word of Jesus. I mean Jesus himself didn't go in riding a donkey, did he? And then there was actually one Christian that pointed out, actually he did multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
for those that
anything,
don't
the
understand.
SJWs are caused by Christian authoritarians. Yeah. Christian statists have been wanting to impose their religion for centuries. When SJWs come up to oppose it, they think they have to use force to oppose it. It's all the same, though, religion and government. It's only recently that we had this idea that they were two different things.
Yeah.
Before then, they were always, from the start, they were always the same thing.
Shane, I know you live in North Carolina, so I'd imagine you've been hearing a lot about the Mark Robinson's whole scandal. That's a
Oh, yeah, you
That's
mean
pretty
the
wild, isn't it?
Republican governor candidate? Yeah.
yeah.
God, how could the Republicans, oh my God, could they have possibly nominated a worse guy?
Yeah.
Because the guy who's running on the Democrats, I'm drawing a blank on his name. But
Josh
he's
Stein.
what's that? Oh yeah, Josh Stein.
Josh
yeah.
Stein.
Yeah, he'll basically be Roy Cooper's third term. And people are kind of fed up with the Cooper administration. And all the Republicans really had to do was nominate someone who isn't completely horrible. And they couldn't manage it.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
similar to Pennsylvania, where, oh God, I forgot his name, but the governor there, he everyone in Pennsylvania hates him, nobody likes him, and basically the Republicans in Pennsylvania had the perfect opportunity to overthrow him, and then they picked that one doctor from the doctors who's a known quack.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Doug Mastriano guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a similar thing to what happened in the 2008 election. When a lot of Republicans were blaming libertarians, for why Obama won, because you voted for a third party when you should have voted for John McCain. And I'm like, no, no, you guys lost the primary because yeah, not a lot of people liked Barack Obama, and you had a perfect opportunity to. And there were plenty of candidates, that were far more charismatic and could beat him than he did, and you picked Mitt Romney.
Yep.
Well, no, Mitt Romney was in 2012.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I thought he was.
John McCain was in 2008.
Oh yeah, 2008. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, it's like no. You had all these leaders. Like there were tons of people like Newt Gingrich, Ron Paul, Rick Santorum. Who are more charismatic than Obama and were better at him. And you picked Romney.
To be fair,
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
had
it
a whole
was
slew of
immediately
people.
it was immediately after a recession, and also during the Iraq War, and also because Bush was so unpopular. I don't think anyone they nominated could have won, to be honest.
Well, they would have had to dissociate themselves from Bush, which some of them were. Not enough, but
Yeah.
like Giuliani
And
wasn't.
as for Romney,
Yeah.
as for Romney, I think he was kind of undone by that whole 47% thing he said was caught on camera saying. That was a whole controversy back then.
He just came across as a dumber Obama.
Yeah, many people pointed out he was just Obama if Obama was a Republican instead of a Democrat.
Well, Obamacare was basically Romney care.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. Or I think a lot of people kind of resented him because, like, back in 2012, if you'll remember, that was around the time, like, the Occupy Wall Street stuff was going on. And so people saw him kind of as a rich snob and a representative of the 1%, so-called.
Which he basically was.
But yeah.
And really, he just didn't come across that well. Obama was, charismatic, energetic, and everything. And Romney was kind of deadpan compared to him. I'm always having to ask the question of whether or not the chat froze. Because it actually froze earlier tonight.
Yeah, voluntary liberal asks, "What this may be out of left field, but what are your thoughts on deism?"
No evidence for it, so I reject it. Pretty much all there
Yeah,
is to it.
Yeah, but you got to give it where credit is due. They're not like pushy on it like the other religions are.
Well, at least they're not clinging to like easily observed falsifications of it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're basically the people that said they believe that there is a heavenly creator, but once he created Earth, that was it, and basically he let nature take over.
Yeah, he just wound the universe up, set it going, and then left to
Yeah.
pursue other interests.
Went on to do other things. I think didn't Albert Einstein say something like that where he said if God was real, why would he care about what we do on Earth? He's got a massive universe he can explore and play with. Why would he care about this one planet he made?
Yeah, that was more of his speculations. When he was talking about his belief, he was talking more of the Spinozan kind of God, the pantheist God.
Yeah.
The God is everywhere. God is in all things.
I love how the TV show Moral Oral used that where Oral started thinking he had he had actual magical abilities because he was told there's God in everything, and he's like, even in me, yes, even in you. So he starts doing all this crazy stuff, and when people say, Oral, why are you doing this? Well, because God told me to do it, and he's inside me, so it has to have some authority. And then his dad has to say, okay, yes, Moral, God is in everything, but it's still so distributed that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, like what tiny percentage of God would you be?
Yeah. I still like how the religions how no religious group can ever answer the paradox. And I know it's applied to the Christian God, but it can really apply to any deity. Okay, so if something is omnipotent and all powerful, can it make an object that is so massive and so heavy they can't push it? Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Because if it's so massive that the deity itself can't push it, well, then they're not all powerful. And if they can't do it, well, that only proves the point. They have a limit.
Yeah, and it's just one of the many contradictions
Yeah.
about having a God that's all powerful
Yep.
or all knowing.
Hmm.
Because if he were all knowing, how could he really know it?
Yeah.
And then with all loving or all good is probably a better way of putting it, you get the problem of evil. And kind of like what we were saying earlier, are things moral because God says so? Or does God say they're immoral because they're immoral? I don't know how you can have that many fundamental contradictions and still survive. It's just flabbergasting to me. I really don't know what's up with it. I'm getting dropped frames out the bejesus. I just had another cluster of them right there. And it's like the kilobits per second jump up to like 11 megabits and then jump back down to like 3,500. No idea what's going on with that.
Hmm. Hmm. And earlier mentioned Calvinist. I think I saw a funny joke. About think about Calvinism one time where like there's a guy exploring different religions and he asks, so what's Calvinism all about? It's like, oh, it's very simple. See, the whole philosophy of Calvinism is every single enjoyable feeling you experience and feel, yeah, that's evil and a sin, and you can't be feeling like that. You got to be miserable. Hmm.
Or the Puritans are kind of related. Ambrose Bierce, I think it was, described them.
Yeah.
as the sort of person who lies awake at night worried that someone somewhere might be happy.
Yeah. And like no joke, there are like not just Calvinists, there are Christians out there, that flat out do say that happiness is a sin because, you're supposed to feel God through suffering, and if you're happy, you're not suffering.
Yep.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's what a lot of people were saying was kind of the dark side of Mother Teresa, because, yeah, she had her hospital where she was trying to help people. She wasn't like deliberately, causing them pain or anything, but she allowed a lot of suffering that she could have eased because she believed that that would bring her and them closer to God, experiencing that
Yeah.
suffering.
Yeah. To which I want to ask those Calvinists who created pain and suffering to begin with.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, they have
Yeah.
their ways out of it, like man, sin, and the fall, and stuff like that. Aside from
Yeah.
all of the reasons why that is not a very good reason at all and doesn't make any sense, it also doesn't explain the suffering of animals, especially in contexts where there are no humans present,
Yeah.
and yet animals still suffer. Oh, read the Bible, voluntary liberal. Read the Old Testament. The guy's the biggest sadist ever.
Yeah, I think there's that old joke among some, atheist comedians. The best way to turn someone into an atheist is have them read an unabridged Bible front to back.
Yep. That's what did it for a lot of atheists.
I know Pendulet said that's what made him an atheist was that he went to is that because his parents were Catholic and they sent him to religious class every Wednesday and all that, and they kicked him out because he kept asking questions and he kept saying, hey, the book says this, but then they go ahead and do this and God says that's okay and all this and that, and basically they told him, yeah, don't bring your son back here, please.
Well, Matt
Yeah.
Dillahunty actually went to something like either seminary school or something like that. He was studying, to be a preacher or some sort of theologian like that, and just intensely studying the Bible. And that's not only what made him an atheist, that's what made him a pretty unstoppable debater about it.
Yep.
Because he, like, let's see, Saitin Bruggencate was one. I forget what some of the other. He's gone up against some pretty big, heavy hitters in the religious world and just dominated them. Wasn't even close.
Yeah, it's like how when people ask, well, what if you're wrong? A lot of atheists will point out, well, even if we are wrong, that doesn't mean the Bible's correctly because an all-knowing and omnipotent being wouldn't have a contradictory book. The Bible is clearly the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, all of them. They're clearly books written by man. That's why they're so contradictory and give all these crazy advices that seem to contradict each other.
Now let's see what else is going on in the world.
Apparently, I don't know. Apparently, RFK Jr. is on this weird crusade against junk food or something. I don't know. I don't know what the
Oh yeah, he's
details,
always
but
been one of those things where you find random, hard to pronounce ingredients and then fearmonger about them.
Yep. You know, it's one thing when we have all these debates about health foods and all that. You know, it's one thing that always gets left out, and not a lot of people bring it up. At the end of the day, it's our choice. You know,
Yep.
Mhm.
Like,
it's
who
like,
doesn't know that junk food is bad for them?
yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me, of like I don't know if you've heard of that. There's this really terrible thing on YouTube. It's called Cocoa Melon, and it's like they've done studies that have shown that not only is it not educational, it can actually damage children, developmentally and all that. And I like how there's many videos about how bad it is, and the number one comment on it is like, "Don't get me wrong, this show's terrible, and you shouldn't show this to your kids, but it's your job as a parent to be monitoring that crap."
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, people go on about like, oh, how certain American foods are banned in the EU and we should ban them too, or something like it.
All
That seems
sorts
to be
of
the
crazy stuff is banned in the EU. That doesn't mean anything.
yeah,
also that's sort of like that's sort of
yeah.
like one stop solution to
My my
everything.
bro-
It seems like for a
my
lot
brother,
of people.
I once I didn't say anything because it was a family meeting, but my brother-in-law was like that. He was ranting about how the U.S. doesn't have the metric system, and we don't have this and that. We're the only developed country that doesn't have universal health care in the metric system. And I'm just thinking, Matt, the U.S. government, the EU has a lot of crazy stuff too.
They still got state religions over there.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Wait, in the EU?
Yeah, most of
Oh,
the EU countries have a state religion.
yep.
Oh, because some of them have monarchies or something.
Well, yeah, because the king is the head of the C of E, and I think France,
Uh,
Germany, Denmark, all sorts of countries where the whoever's in power, the prime minister or whoever, is also in charge of the state religion.
uh, well, I mean, I think. Well, obviously, there's Britain, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Spain. I think the Benelux countries. And maybe some others I'm forgetting. But most countries in Europe are republics, and even the ones that do have monarchies are in practice pretty secular.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still got the state religions.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah,
ironically,
the weather's terrible. That's why I'm not anywhere near 100%. You might have missed that discussion, voluntary liberal. I think you came in late, but yeah, the humidity is 97% and my pain levels are through the roof. That's why I had to postpone it yesterday, because my mother-in-law actually thought I was sick by how I looked.
Mm.
Theoretically, people could argue that the poor can't afford healthier foods. Well, and why would that be? Why can't we afford produce and, fresh meat and things like that? Could it be because of Wickard v. Filburn and the Agricultural Adjustment Act and the USDA?
Yep. Speaking of food and all that, it also reminds me in some TV shows, when they do an episode about vegetarians or vegans and all that, they do a lot of vegan food and all that, and they're doing it about school cafeteria food. And the common argument is that they portray the other side as being like status quo people that don't want to change, but never do they once bring up the argument. The issue that a lot of people have with with schools, adopting an all vegan menu isn't that they're there. It's that they want everything to be vegan, and again, it should be up to people's choice what they want to put.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because the vegans in the episode are like, well, we just want to be able to eat a diet, that's environmentally friendly. And I'm like, okay, go to any supermarket, they have a vegan section.
Yep.
Mm.
And what
Right.
was the last section that remained uneaten during COVID when all the other shelves were empty?
Mm.
They were grabbing everything but the vegan food.
Yeah. I do like how South Park, even though they still kind of fell for that trap, they still ended the episode by pointing out that, look, at the end of the day, most vegan food is heavily processed stuff too. So
Oh yeah, I mean and if you look at things like organic food, it's not any better for you.
yeah,
And in fact, you're a lot more likely to get foodborne illnesses through it.
yeah.
Oh, but the other farmers, their fertilizers are chemicals. And what are yours? Dark matter?
Yeah. I know we had this discussion in the last podcast, but it kind of reminds me about how there's so many people that are against nuclear power because it's unnatural and against Mother Nature. And I'm just like, people, if you paid attention in physics class, you'd know nuclear energy is the most all organic natural energy there is.
Yeah. Where do you think the nuclear material comes from?
Yeah.
And also,
You
it's
dig
an
it out
appeal
of
to
Mother
nature
Earth.
fallacy either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, it's
Also,
an appeal to nature fallacy.
Also reminds me of this one Velociraptor meme I saw one time where it goes, so if solar energy is powered by the sun, and the sun is powered by nuclear fission, does that mean solar is technically nuclear?
Hey, when you look at it, all of our power is nuclear.
Yep.
Because even in things like coal and stuff like that, we got that from the sun. That's what that is. Sun made trees, and then the trees made the coal, and the sun is a nuclear furnace. But even like geothermal, which is the only other place we can get power from, what's keeping our core hot? Nuclear material, uranium, and whatever else might be down there.
Yeah.
And while technically nuclear isn't sustainable, if we were actually allowed to use like all of the energy in nuclear, the nuclear material instead of just calling it waste and burying it or something like that, if we're actually allowed to use all of that, and if we were to mine uranium and thorium from the oceans, we would have enough to power all of humanity's needs for 5 billion years until the sun expands and fries the earth. So technically, it might not be renewable, but does it really matter?
Yeah, it can last. It can last one hell of a long time.
Yeah. And like if you
Libertaro says, as if chemical is a dirty word. Also, nuclear is organic. It's funny they talk about chemicals because thing is, everything in the known universe is made out of chemicals.
Yep. All right. Am I back now?
Yep.
Okay. Take your look at your pinky finger from that first knuckle up to the end. If you had a piece of uranium that size, you can get as much energy out of that as a ton of coal. So it's just like incredibly energy packed. Yep, sun's not going to last forever. And the thing I was saying about, using all of the energy from it and extracting it, that's not even like if we get the technology. We've known how to do that since like the 1960s. They just won't let them do it because, we still have the hysteria about what if Iran gets a hold of it? If Iran can enrich the uranium, they could get bombs. It's like getting the nuclear material is like the least of your problems. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Because I got a bunch of dropped frames again. Right. Getting, in order to make a nuclear bomb, you have to go through a whole lot of extremely difficult steps, the least of which is getting the nuclear material.
Yeah.
So when they talk about all of that, about the nuclear proliferation or anything, it's a very exaggerated concern.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still in favor of getting rid of our nuclear weapons, but a lot of people have actually pointed out that when you really think about it, nuclear weapons aren't as dangerous as they used to be because they have a very because contrary to what movies and TV shows portray, they have a very limited life window before they need their warheads replaced. And ever since the fall of the Cold War, neither side has been taking care of their nukes pretty well.
Well, and even if you had like the number that could destroy the Earth and everything, it still wouldn't be a Mad Max scenario because basically you'd destroy the cities,
Oh yeah,
but everywhere else everywhere else would be, like in the, like the middle parts of the country, the rural areas, the mountains and things like
Yeah.
that. They'd be fine and people would just build new cities.
Hmm.
You wouldn't be like in this, Mad Max scenario.
yeah,
And even in the cities, we know from observing Chernobyl, that things went down a lot, as far as radiation levels are concerned, they went down a lot faster than anyone predicted.
Oh yeah, contrary to what some people say, there are people that still live in Chernobyl. There's not a lot of them, but and they live mainly on the outskirts, but people still live there.
No, they live in the exclusion zone.
Yeah.
They're living in the exclusion zone. There aren't many of them. There's like a few hundred, but.
Yeah.
And of course, they have to be careful about what they eat and drink.
Yeah.
Yep. And people still live in Fukushima. There's even a 7-Eleven right across the street from
Oh, yeah.
the plant.
Fukushima was never a problem. There was no reason to evacuate anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people say, "Well, but if it was safe, then why did the Japanese do all this and that?" Well, part of it, like you said, was because of our exaggerated fear. But another
Just
reason too is
hysteria,
just
yeah.
because, yeah. But another reason too, and this is, I think, also a valid point. It's just a safety precaution.
Well, I mean, they went way overboard with it.
Yeah.
Well, most of them will say, first of all, you look at the wind patterns. And in this case, the wind patterns were going out to sea. So it wasn't really an issue anyway. Maybe in extreme scenarios, you would evacuate the people closest to the plant. But mostly it's just shelter in place and we'll come around and give you KI pills. And that's all you would have to do. I don't think nuclear weapons could terraform Venus. I'm not sure about Mars, though. If they could get enough like xenon and krypton and heavier but inert elements like that into the atmosphere and make a thicker, heavier atmosphere to the point where it could actually sustain a thick atmosphere and get enough greenhouse gases in there to where water could be liquid. Now you could technically do that. You would probably have to build nukes especially for that purpose, though, I would think.
Oh, but Shane, Mad Max said that if nuclear war broke out, all the oceans will dry up.
No, oceans are not going to
Yeah.
dry up.
Yeah, that was one thing that even a lot of diehard people were like when they saw like what the rest of the world looks like. And because if I recall correctly, in the first Mad Max, it's not really confirmed that there was a nuclear war. It's just broadly saying the world's falling into pieces and chaos. So chaos and some nations collapse. But then the sequel said, "Oh yeah, there was a nuclear war and almost all the nations of the world collapse." And then Mad Max goes to the shore, and we find out that like 90% of the Earth's oceans dried up, and a lot of people are like, how?
Ronald Skeckle says, you read what I posted on Rumble. I've been posting quite a bit. Yeah, I forgot to check that. And I just tried to check and it's frozen up on me. So Rumble might be the cause of the problems I've been having, the drop frames and everything.
It's another post-apocalyptic movie that is nothing but fear-mongering and it's completely over-exaggerated. Waterworld.
Oh, that was a terrible movie.
Yeah.
God,
and
that
I like
was
how
terrible.
there was actually a guy that said, "Why is Waterworld a stupid movie?" Well, here's the thing: if both the North and the South Pole were to completely melt, there'd still be plenty of land left. It would only be dangerous only if you lived in the coastal cities.
Well, and that's one problem, going back to the religion thing, the problem with Noah's flood, there isn't enough water to cover everything.
Yeah.
One of the
People
many problems with that story.
Yeah, people say, "Oh, but water covers 70% of the earth. Oh, of the earth. It covers 70% of the earth's surface."
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, God, I'm going to forget the math on this. But like every inch you raise the sea levels, it's just so much harder to get that next inch. Well, I think it's a power of 3. Like however much water you need to raise it an inch, you need that amount of water times itself to get that next inch.
Yeah.
Because the volume,
the universal attraction is more entertaining than the movie, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some
Yeah, but
people say
it's like
stupid.
the way the volume increases with every inch because it just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Like, some people say, well, why are you, hating on Waterworld when it's supposed to be a movie? It's like, you can only take the whole suspension of disbelief so far. And trust me, if you're making a post-apocalyptic film, but it has really, really bad science, people will notice that.
Well, and especially if it's bad acting and bad writing, which this was too. It didn't really have anything going for it.
It's one apocalypse, scenario
I
that
mean,
is so
the science in Armageddon was terrible, but at least it was a watchable movie. I wouldn't say it was a great movie. I think it's very overhyped, but it was watchable. You could sit down and kind of watch it and have fun with it, but the science is terrible.
Yeah, that do is hit it with something that'll knock it off course and let gravity do the rest.
Yeah, because if you get it early enough, you don't have to deviate it that much, and you don't even hit it with everything. You just fly your spaceship next to it, and then your spaceship's gravity just tugs it.
Yeah.
But the problem is if you blow it up, okay, you've blown it into tiny pieces, but those tiny pieces are still going in the same ballistic orbit, so it's just going to be more pieces raining down on the planet.
Yeah. Speaking of asteroids, apparently for the next 2 months we're gonna have a temporary second moon.
Yeah, Apophis is coming in.
Yeah. Unfortunately, from what I heard, you're not really going to be able to see it because it's like pretty far away, So unless you have a really good microscope, you're not going to. I mean, a good telescope, you're not really going to see it.
Yeah.
Because it's too far away. Like it's technically in Earth's orbit, but it's still far. But it's still past, the moon. So.
Yeah, I don't think it's even going to come within the orbit of the moon.
Yeah.
And even if it would, you still wouldn't be able to see it because the moon's a lot larger than Apophis.
Oh, yeah.
I have to head out, unfortunately. I've got some stuff to take care of. But
that's fine.
Right, good to talk to you, Sid.
All right, see you. Yep. Thanks. See you.
See ya.
Yeah, it's also...
Yeah,
also
it won't technically be a moon because it won't be orbiting us, but it'll just be joining us for a while.
Yeah. Which from what I've heard, from one of the articles I've read, apparently that happens all the time, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There are some weird celestial bodies that kind of sort of share our orbit, and every now and then someone will publish it. Hey, did you know that Earth has a second moon? Yeah, but it's not really.
Oh yeah, I know NASA and like the space and like a lot of those, astrology and a lot of those astronomy, organizations, they're very picky with what counts as a body because like a perfectly good example that we brought up with that discussion, Pluto, is that technically speaking, if we want to consider every large body, that has a strong enough gravitational pull, then technically the solar system has like 10,000 planets, not 8.
Yeah. It's like, well, why can't Pluto be a planet? Okay, well, if Pluto's a planet, we not only have to consider Eris to be a planet, we got to consider about 500 other things to be a planet. So how many planets do you want to learn? 8 or several hundred?
to which some people would say, "Oh, so the reason why Pluto became a planet is because we're lazy."
Well, the thing is, if we discovered Pluto now, we would not consider it to be a planet. We considered it a planet to be back then because they grossly overestimated its size because it has such a high albedo that they thought it was a lot bigger than it was because it was too bright in the telescope for as far away as it was. They thought it had to be big. And then as time went on, they just kept shrinking down Pluto's size. Oh, it turns out Pluto's a lot smaller than we thought. And it's smaller and it's smaller. This rate is going to disappear completely.
If I recall correctly, we didn't even really get a good size of what Pluto looked like up close and personal until the Voyager space probes, right?
I know, it was the New Horizon.
Yeah.
That was when we finally got a good picture.
Yeah, they finally got close enough, and they realized, wow, we knew Pluto was small, but damn, there's asteroids in the asteroid belt bigger than it.
But it's got that heart on it, so it loves us. It may be small, but it has a big heart.
Yeah.
But no, it doesn't orbit like a planet. It's way off of the ecliptic. It's in with a whole bunch of other very similar bodies. So,
back when it was considered a planet, isn't there like a scenario that happens every couple thousand years where it actually crosses Neptune and then Pluto becomes the 8th planet and Neptune's the 9th planet?
Yeah, that was the case. I think it was actually the case for most of my life. It's just been here recently that it went outside of the orbit of Neptune. It's got like a 200-year orbit or something like that. And it's like for like 20 years or so every orbit, I think it's within the orbit of Neptune. Not really, because it's not on the same plane, but it's closer to the sun than Neptune is, you could say. Because it's a very elliptical orbit, which is another thing that's weird about it. I mean, all orbits are ellipses, but Pluto is just... It's so off kilter in so many ways. It's like one of these things is not like the others.
Speaking of space, I don't know if it's just you, but don't you get like a little uncanny fear when you see like some of those images of like some of those, ash celestial bodies and all that?
The what now?
Don't you ever get like an uncanny, anxiety when you look at photos of some of those celestial bodies, though, like lagoons and all, like the Lagoon Nebula or the Horsehead Nebula?
No, why is that?
Because I'm not gonna lie, I do a little bit, Like, I'm not terrified of them, they just give me like the heebie-jeebies, some of them, when I look at them.
Yeah, I'm trying to switch over to... I think it is Rumble. I might have to stop streaming on Rumble to get this thing to work. I hate having to do that, but I think that's what I'm going to have to do.
I guess it makes sense, that some people would be a little uneasy about some of those, celestial bodies, because let's be real here, they only show how small we are.
Oh yeah, I'm just going to end it because it's glitching and it's dropping out again. If you're watching this on Rumble, so sorry about this, but I think this is what we're going to have to do to fix it for everyone else. If you don't like YouTube, you can come on over to Odyssey and watch it there. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being a subscriber on Rumble, but we'll see you on the other ones.
Oh, you're not ending the live stream, just Rumble.
I'm just ending the Rumble part. Yeah.
Okay.
So now we're on YouTube and Odyssey. And let's see if that works better.
Yeah, you're trying to figure it out, and I'm talking about random stuff to myself.
Yeah.
I'm autistic. I'm used to talking to myself. Yeah, that used to bug me all the time, because when I was a kid, I used to talk to myself a lot, and you know what always grinded my gears was when my mom or dad would be like, "Christopher, who are you talking to?" I don't know, people. Why don't you talk to yourself more often? It's actually therapeutic sometimes when you're just sitting alone and you're talking to yourself. You'd be surprised what you discover. Weren't there some great philosophers who are recognized as great people, and they would spend like hours upon hours just talking to themselves in the mirror?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great way to work things through a lot of times.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure any practicing therapists you've talked to have said there are a couple of patients where really all they just need is that one person to talk to and actually listen and take in what they have to say for them to kind of realize, oh, you know what? I think I figured out what I need to do to make myself better. Not all, but some people.
Okay, so how's the stream doing now? Is it doing better?
Seems to be.
I'm not glitching out or anything.
I'm not noticing anything.
I guess it was Rumble. I hate that, man, but had to sacrifice Rumble for the good of the rest of the stream. I don't know, man. It's never done this before. Maybe if people talk to themselves, they'd realize that coercion is evil and the state is unjust. I mean, you'd be surprised how many things where I've just been like kind of confused about, and I want to put it in a video, but I don't know how to do it. And I just try talking it out aloud.
Yeah.
And just try talking it out, and then I end up getting it.
Yeah, I've actually heard some speech coaches and all that. That's what they say before you say or type something down. They always say always say it aloud to yourself and listen to how it sounds, because sometimes and I've learned this the hard way, it sounds perfect in your head and on paper, but when you read it out loud, it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the to think I saw it on Mulberry Street effect. Yeah. Yeah, that's just a boring horse and cart. No, I'm gonna tell my dad I saw a three-ring circus, a parade of all these crazy, exciting stuff. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I don't even care if it's not true. I'm just gonna tell him it because it's something different. Hey, son, what'd you say? What'd you see on your way home from school? Oh, the same horse and buggy as always.
Yep. Yeah, that's even what like the Toastmasters will say, just practice your speech.
Yeah.
Practice it out loud. Practice it, to a spouse or to anyone who'll listen. Just do it. Just try it.
I mean, I remember seeing like a documentary about some former presidents. Like some former presidents have said, before they deliver a speech, it's very common for the president to literally talk it over with their spouse. They'll call the first lady over and say, "Hey, I'm going to deliver a speech. How do you think it sounds like?"
Well, and they'll prep for debates by actually having them stand at a podium and throw questions at them.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if Trump, because like we were saying with that last debate, Trump was basically not taking it seriously. I wonder if he and his campaign just kind of skipped that part. Just like, yeah, just go in and say whatever. Because maybe if they had prepped him, that he would have done a lot better.
Yeah.
Because I won't say Kamala won that debate because I don't think there's any reasonable ways to say she did.
Yeah.
But again, he did not bring his A game.
Yeah. But then again, to be fair, and like I said, as we said earlier, many people pointed this out, the irony is that it only shows just how bad Kamala is, because I'm pretty sure most debaters most debate practitioners would tell you, oh yeah, Trump was not bringing his A game. You easily could have torn him to pieces, Kamala, and you didn't. You let your moderator do it for you.
Yep. Well, I don't know. It may be like somewhere between here and Rumble, like somewhere where there's a major internet gateway that's not between here and YouTube or wherever. And maybe that's, who knows? Because all sorts of things could mess it up. Because, like, I'm not sure where exactly it is, but it's supposed to come up like through or near Atlanta, and Atlanta is like a big hub for internet activity. So if it's got to go through there to get to Rumble from here, that may be it.
Yeah, earlier
because we've seen what happens. Supposedly the internet routes around things like that, but we've seen what happens before when you lose these major hubs. And when Verizon starts to send everything through a steel mill in Pittsburgh. God. That was just silly. But yeah, there have been times when like the Atlanta hub went down and like everyone's like, why can't I access Facebook? Why can't I access all these things? And, you know, it was because that area went down. It's resilient, but maybe not as resilient as advertised.
Were you talking about the band streamer what with your computer or?
Yeah, why Rumble was messing up.
Hmm.
That maybe it was Helene that was doing it.
Oh, maybe it was the hurricane. Goddamn man bear pig.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I still don't like that South Park episode where it's revealed that man bear pig is real because people are like, well, we have proof that global warming was there. That doesn't mean Al Gore was correct because people fail to realize Al Gore wasn't saying global warming is real and it's happening. Meaning we've known for a long time that global warming was a thing. The problem is that he was saying a whole bunch of other crazy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, he was saying that if we don't do something about global warming, basically the movie Waterworld would happen. Basically. Hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you come to the right conclusion if you get there for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, you know.
Because then there's going to be all this other baggage with it. Oh, Helene is a Category 4 hurricane. It's gone by. It's still off the coast of Florida.
Should have been called Jolene. Then we could all be saying, "Oh, Jolene, please don't take my baby away from me."
Looks like it's going to hit. Looks like it might hit Tallahassee tomorrow around this time. Yeah, and it's going to head straight for Atlanta, it looks like.
It's coming right at us.
And then head into Tennessee. It's kind of amazing how they can plot the course of these things, though, considering how chaotic they are.
Yeah, it's another prediction that people say about man bear pig that didn't come true is that they say, oh, weather will get worse and worse. Yet a perfectly good example are tornadoes. Did you know that we haven't had an F5 tornado in over like 13 years or something?
Yeah, a lot of stuff's been better.
Yeah.
And they would say, well, that's proof of it too. Well, you can't have everything prove your hypothesis.
Yeah.
My glasses prescription, it's up there. It's like minus 7.5 or something like that. Blind as a bat.
I'm surprised you got that Jolene reference though too.
Oh yeah, that's an old one.
Yeah.
There are just so many alerts over the next few days. Oh, and it looks like Gavin Newsom signed another gun control bill. Our state is once again leading the way by strengthening our nation-leading gun laws. Then why do so many mass shootings happen in your state?
Yeah. It's because we're not banning them.
Oh, it looks like a red flag law. A judge can consider stalking, acts of animal cruelty, or threats of violence as evidence for a gun violence restraining order.
Yeah.
A person who has a
Yeah.
misdemeanor charge dismissed because they were found to be mentally incompetent will also be prohibited from possessing a gun.
You know, I don't know how true it is, but I've heard from some people, especially some people that work with veterans, you know, one of the reasons why veterans have high suicide rates is because a lot of them are gun owners and they want to keep their guns, but a lot of states have rules that say if you're declared, you know, if you have like PTSD or have severe depression, nope, you've permanently lost your gun rights, so they don't, you know, they don't report their mental illness and it only gets worse.
Yeah.
Hmm. By the way, Shane, you know, it's the dumbest argument I hate having to respond to, and this is something I have heard people say is when we say, when do criminals care about the law? And people are like, okay, so we should just let people rob and murder and rape because hey, criminals are gonna do it anyway.
Oh yeah, that's got like the dumbest take ever. I get that a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, because there's a difference because when you rob, rape, or murder someone, you're infringing on their right. Me owning a gun does not automatically mean I'm infringing on your right.
Great. Born environmentalists are fear mongering about Tesla.
Yeah.
Tesla is causing distracted drivers because no other car company has distracted
Yeah.
drivers. Ford drivers are
Yeah.
never distracted. Toyota drivers are never distracted.
Mm. Reminds me about how people love to use the Ford Pinto as an example of why we need government regulation, and they talk about how Ford was greedy and they you know put a rear safety valve in it, and thus it could cause the car to catch fire and explode if it got hit. And when I saw a video on that, there were the comments such as was full of people saying, "Wait a minute, I owned a Ford Pinto and I never encountered that."
Yeah.
Yeah,
There have been like 2 or 3 different analyses that said that everything they said about the Ford Pinto was wrong.
yeah. And maybe people have pointed out there's far worse cards than that. You know, speaking of cars, you know, and this also goes back to Ford. You know, it's the biggest proof that, contrary to what some people say advertising doesn't force you or mentally trick you into buying stuff. The Ford Ed Seal,
The Edsel, yeah.
yeah,
But if they want to talk about like dangerous cars, because you know you mentioned the Ford Pinto, and there was the Chevy Corvair that Ralph Nader said was unsafe at any speed and things like that. If you look at their safety record, if those cars should have been taken off the road for being unsafe, they should never have let SUVs on the road
yeah.
because of things like their, you know, high center of balance and everything. They're just
Well, the
so
thing with
much
the
harder
well,
and
the
so
thing,
much
well,
more
the thing,
dangerous to drive.
well, the
And
thing,
when
well,
there
the,
and when there's an accident, there's just so much more death and fatalities because of their mass.
well, actually, what I said about the Ford Ezio, from what I understand, it wasn't a bad car per se. It was just ugly, and like I said, it wasn't a bad car. It just didn't live up to the hype. You know, the people that bought it are like, I mean, it's a nice car, but Ford, you know, was advertising saying it was going to be the coolest, greatest thing, and it's just another car. You
Yeah,
know,
it was just kind of blah. It wasn't
yeah,
your average car was a lot better than the Edsel.
yeah, you know. But yeah, Ford advertised the hell out of it, and like, because we learned this in media study, you know, they told people, you know, and the worst part is that there's a lot of people that talk about how advertising colludes. You know, when people bring up the Ford Ezio, they say, "Well, that was a fluke, not the exception." It's like, no, they've done studies and they show nobody can force you to do that. You know,
Well, and other examples, I've mentioned New Coke before.
yeah,
Windows 8 was another example. because they blitzed advertising everywhere and did all sorts of product placement in TV shows, and people still didn't like Windows 8.
Yep. You know, it's another thing too. That I also find so funny is that like the teacher is that the teacher in our media study class was always talking about how it's like every time you see a product, like a poster and a show that was clearly an advertisement and all that, and I'm just like they were talking about a Superman movie and all that, and when he crashes into a Coke, billboard. But looking back now, I'm like, yeah, but if I also recall correctly, doesn't that fight take place in Metropolis, which is meant to be this big sprawling, urban city like New York, and those cities have large advertisements like that.
Yeah.
Part of me
Metropolis
wonders,
is basically Manhattan.
yeah.
Metropolis is more like a utopian New York, and Gotham is more like a dystopian New York.
Yeah.
I don't know how they operate in the same universe, but there you go.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Well, that's why it at least makes sense for Marvel to just set everything in New York.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too that many people fail to realize: the reason why, people are like, how come Metropolis is, so prosperous, despite the fact that it has crime and all that, it's so prosperous, yet Gotham, despite having a competent police force, and Batman, it's a corrupt, crime-ridden cesspool. Here's the thing: originally they were two separate characters, and they lived in completely different universes. It wasn't until
they weren't supposed to be together originally. They were completely separate things.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, it wasn't until like the 60s or 70s that DC said, okay, let's take the Flash, Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, everyone, and let's just put them in the same universe.
Yeah, because they wanted the Justice League, they wanted the Super Friends, yeah.
And another thing too that comes up, with DC Comics, with the paradox and all that is that, especially with Gotham, it's like many people have pointed out, listen, Batman, if you really want to get rid of these people, why not have some of your superhero friends take your place? Because some guys like the Flash or Superman, they could deal with, guys like the Joker much easily.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If anything, Batman would be a much better candidate to go after Lex Luthor than Superman, because if I recall correctly, the reason why Superman, can never truly beat Lex Luthor is not because, Lex Luthor has secret powers or anything. It's because, Superman can destroy, foil Lex Luthor's evil robots and all that. But at the end of the day, he's an anonymous superhero, and even as Clark Kent, he's just a reporter. He doesn't have any connections, so he doesn't have any proof to prove that Lex Luthor is a criminal. Batman, on the other hand, he's a detective. I mean, not a professional one, but he has detective skills. He's the one that could actually say, okay, we can't just destroy this robot. We got to find the link between Lex Luthor and building this giant robot so we can take it to the proper authorities that even he can't hide behind.
Well, and not only does he have the connections to the police as Bruce Wayne, he's got a ton of money.
Yeah, yeah, whereas Clark Kent, he's, for all the public knows, he's just an average country boy who happens to live in Metropolis.
Well, that's pretty much what he is, because remember, Clark Kent isn't Superman's secret identity. Superman is Clark Kent's secret identity. But all his life, he was known as Clark Kent. He identifies as Clark Kent, and Superman is someone he just becomes on occasion.
Yeah.
But mostly, he's just a guy trying to get by.
I still find it funny how Superman doesn't wear a secret a mask or anything, and it's like people can't tell the difference that that's just Clark Kent without his glasses.
Yeah, he puts his glasses on and no one knows.
Yeah. I think I saw a joke like that. I think I saw a joke like that one time. It was like a parody where Superman's showing up to say, cause a person to show up for a fire, but he forgets to take off his glasses, and Lois Lane is like, Clark, what are you doing here? You gotta get out of here. Out of here. My apartment's burning down. Why aren't you just a Superman anyway? We need the real Superman. And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot. And he takes him off. It's like, oh, Superman, you're here to save me. By the way, where'd Clark go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did that in Mystery Men. The Superman character was Lance Hunt was the guy and Captain Amazing was the persona. And so Ben Stiller was saying, it was like, well, because Lance Hunt is Captain Amazing, and William H. Macy is like, no, look, we've been over this. Lance Hunt wears glasses. Captain Amazing doesn't wear glasses. And it's like, he takes them off when he transforms. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. He wouldn't be able to see.
Yeah.
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 Superman hearing the cries of Jason Todd being beat by a crowbar, knowing he could fly over there and save him.
Yeah.
That's why the first movie doesn't make any sense, because he can fly fast enough to turn the Earth backwards in time, but only because he wanted to save Lois Lane, because he couldn't get from New Jersey to Metropolis in 10 minutes.
Yeah. I do like how, like now the more modern comics have tried to, tone down Superman, and he's no longer like the overpowered Howard Gary Stu that he was in the Silver Age. Because, like, if I recall in the Silver Age comic, in the Silver Age, let's be real here. Silver Age Superman was a very poorly written character. Basically, his superpower was whatever the plot demanded him to have.
Well, even the Golden Age Superman, they just made him too powerful, and that's why they had to come up with kryptonite.
Yeah.
Because there was just no real way to threaten him.
Yeah, it's like I set something on fire. That's okay. I'll just blow it out with my super breath.
But then they had that great story arc starting a few years ago. It went on for like, I think 3 or 4 years, where I forget what had happened, but something had happened and the Fortress of Solitude didn't recognize him and went back into the Earth and tried to take the suit with him, and Superman was only able to rip off part of the cape, and he lost most of his powers. He just had those parts of his cape tied around his hand. He still had like super strength and everything, but he could actually be hurt. And for the first time, he had to face being mortal. And so it was a few years before he could rebuild the Fortress of Solitude and, get his powers back. But even then, I don't think his powers are like, he's not like super stupendous man like he was. He's a lot more powerful, not invincible like he was. And of course, there was a lot of character growth during that time too. So that was done really well. Is it true Golden Age Superman couldn't fly?
If I recall correctly,
I think originally he could just jump really high.
Yeah.
But I think he could still, at some point in the Golden Age, I think he could fly. I don't think that was Silver Age. I think that happened still during the Golden Age.
Yeah, I think Superman being so powerful, I think that's one of the reasons why his rival Mixius Pickleg, is one of his is a fan favorite villain, because he's one of the few villains that Superman cannot beat, with strength alone. Because if I recall correctly, Mixip, he's pretty much a demigod. The only thing he can do is trick him. Yeah, into saying or spelling his name backwards. I miss Gilbert Gottfried. He voiced Mr. Mixie-Up in the animated series. He was so hilarious. Yeah. Your 3 months are up, and this time you're not gonna deny me my fun. Oh, hello there, Mr. Kill Tipsism. Not Kill Tipsism! Mixius Pickleg! Now, the first thing I'm gonna... Oh, nuts! Then he disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, there was like a comic where Mixius Pickleg was like, nope, I'm not going to say my name backwards. You can't do it. And Superman keeps calling him Kill Tipsism over and over again, and he encourages all his friends. Every time you see him go, oh no, it's Mr. Kill Tipsism. And finally he got so annoyed that he finally yelled out, it's not Kill Tipsism, it's Mixius Pickleg. And now I'm going to, ow! And then he got sent back.
Yeah, but that's the problem. You just can't have your character be too powerful.
Yeah.
Just like you can't have your hero be too good. He needs to have flaws.
Yeah, you know. I mean, that's one thing that, the animated show and some of the other series did get kind of good about Superman is that even though he's a little bit overpowered, they do show that he's still a person and, he has mental emotions that he has to go through. Max. Oh, yeah, the
You
Max
have Max
Fleischer
Fleischer to
Superman.
thank for what? What do you have Max Fleischer to thank for?
The Superman, the Superman being able to fly, apparently.
Ah, so that was the
Yeah.
cartoons that introduced that.
Yep. Yep.
I knew he
if I
could. He
recall-
could fly. I knew he could fly by the time the George Reeve TV series.
Hmm.
He could fly. Then I think he could fly in the radio series too.
Speaking of George Reeves, I still can't believe that there's a whole conspiracy over how he actually died.
Nah,
It's
who
pretty.
knows?
It's like.
They'll come up with a conspiracy about anything.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the people that were insisting that he was murdered, they came from his friends and family, and the sad truth is, and I have seen this before, is like people just can't accept the fact that he was a human, he had his flaws, and unfortunately they caught up with him, and he decided to end himself. And people are like, no, that couldn't be. He was a great guy. How could he do that? It's like people, it happens.
Yeah, depression happens. It's
Yeah.
just like Robin Williams, just like so many others.
Yeah. It's also kind of similar. It's also kind of similar to the Trayvon Martin case. Everyone's like, "Oh," his whole family was like, "Oh, he was a sweet boy. He never would have done that. He didn't deserve to get shot." And yet, all his friends and family and classmates were saying, sorry, Mrs. Martin, but he was a jerk. He was a bully, and he kept beating
Yeah.
people up. And we early warned him. It's like, dude, you got to control your temper, or else one day you're gonna pick a fight with the wrong person." And unfortunately, he did that.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Max Fleischer, very underappreciated animator. Contrary to popular belief, it was the Fleischer brothers that revolutionized cartoons, not Disney.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really innovated a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Max Fleischer, they revolutionized and created whole different techniques in cartoons, and Disney just popularized it.
Yep.
Hmm.
Well, and a lot of Disney was because of Ub Iwerks too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Disney. I wonder how long it's going to take for Disney to realize IP laws are stupid because, one of the reasons, I think one of the reasons why they're remaking everything is simply because, they shot themselves in the foot. The tough IP laws they lobbied for decades are biting them in the butt because, see, the reason why Disney took all these risks was because you had all these books and fairy tales that were in the public domain that you could have done movies on. Now you don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Because
that's why you have to like buy Star Wars and buy Marvel and things like that.
Yeah. I've actually heard that
even Mickey Mouse was Oswald the Lucky Rabbit with different ears.
Yeah.
That was why he and Ub had the falling out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Fleischer brothers, they go like
they
were like doing silence in the animated, and even in the silent area, I think they were doing things where they were mixing animation with live action.
Oh yeah,
they were among the first to do that.
Yeah, they were doing that back like in the 1910s. There's like a series of silent animations they did where I think they made a short film where a guy is drawing and his drawings come to life and all that.
Well, later on they did it. The Out of the Inkwell series with Coco the Clown, but I think there were like earlier versions of that, like you said, going into like the early silent era.
A lot of people know about Betty Boop, but everyone forgets about her boyfriend, Bimbo the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that people fail to realize. Betty Boop was actually originally a supporting character, not a main character.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and like so many people are saying, wait a minute, Betty Boop was dating a dog? Well, yeah, because fun fact, she was originally a poodle, not a person.
Yep.
Hmm.
And a lot of that, especially the pre-code ones, was she's like a lot of it was her being a pubescent girl just coming into her own, learning about sex.
Yep.
Before the Hays Code put a stop to things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Groofus. Yeah, the Popeye cartoons, the Coco the Clown, the Betty Boops.
Oh, yeah.
What else did they do? They did Felix the Cat, didn't they?
Maybe. I do know they created a mouse character for the sole purpose of giving Disney the middle finger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot what his name was, but yeah, he was basically there. He was basically a foil to Bimbo, and the whole point was basically it was a middle finger to Disney. Hmm. Yeah, not to mention,
Yeah,
not to mention the
all the people pointing out over the decades how it was actually illegal to draw 3 circles in a certain configuration.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
yep,
the Tijuana Bibles, the original Rule 34. They weren't the original Rule 34. I'm sure you had that back in antiquity.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They claim pornography is sinful and against the Bible. Have you ever heard of the Song of Psalms?
Yeah, Song of Solomon, yeah.
Yeah.
Solomon had a lot to sing about.
Yeah.
Going into detail about how he felt about each one of her breasts and things like that.
Yep. Oh yep.
Oh my God, there is everything in that book. There's incest, there's polyamory.
Yep. There's affairs.
You've got Lot's daughters sleeping with him and having children by him.
Yep.
Yeah, Tom and Jerry was Hanna-Barbera. That was over on MGM.
It's a really old cartoon I've been watching on a Cartoon Arcade website lately, and I forgot how funny, and now as an adult I'm appreciating how funny it was. Garfield and Friends.
Oh, let's see what this Ezekiel 23:20 thing is.
There's
oh yeah, this one, yeah. There she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emission was like that of horses.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, lady. After a night with him, you might want to go to your gynecologist and get yourself checked out, because I think he might do some internal damage for you if he did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to verify this.
And
but there are records that, like in ancient China, in some of like the legalist periods where things just got really, really bad, like the punishment, I think, for adultery or prostitution or something like that, was that they would strap her down, arouse a horse, and get the horse to basically do it with her until she died.
Well, believe it or not, this is actually confirmed. I think this was actually confirmed. There was a case of a guy who was into really weird stuff. He actually died after he got it on with a horse, and he suffered from a ruptured rectum.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I love watching about those doctors of Reddit and those YouTube doctors and all that. People ask them people ask them how common is it for people to come in with stuff up their butt, but they won't explain how, and they said it happens more often than you realize.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, one doctor even said, the thing that's actually rare is not how many people come in with stuff up their rectum, it's how little people will react to it. And they come up with some of the craziest story for, okay, why is there a banana up there?
Wrecked him, dang near killed him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Aspirin
like
yeah.
it's like yeah, the doctor's like, how did it get up there again? Well, you see, I was making a fruit salad and one of the bananas fell on the floor right side up and I slipped on some spilled water and I landed on it. Yeah, but sir, that would have crushed the banana. You're telling me this thing went all the way through your pants and underwear up there? Look, just don't ask me. Just don't ask how it got in there. Just get it out. Yeah. Oh, here's another rule I have those doctors say for the ER when it comes to drugs. Tell the medics everything, tell the police nothing.
Yep.
Yeah. That's actually another reason why people die from overdoses is because when they overdose, they're afraid to call 911 because
they're afraid of getting arrested. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that for a long time there was a law that said every time drugs were mentioned up, the police would get called in and basically they'd haul you off to jail. I remember how one comedian, who's been in prison a lot, who has been in prison before, he said, that's the funny irony. People are like, well, if we send him to jail, he won't get any drugs anymore. It's like, listen, if someone is a really bad drug addict, the last place you want to send them is jail.
Oh, yeah. There's drugs all over the place in prisons.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's the worst kept secret that, with the exception of weapons, you can get pretty much whatever you want if you know the right people and have the resources to get it.
No, you can get weapons too. I mean, you won't be able to get howitzers or anything like that, but you could get a zip gun or or something like that.
Oh, yeah, it happens.
Or a shiv or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's either because the corrections officers are corrupt and they're in on the scheme, or, and this is also true because I think this has been caught in many cases, it's not necessarily that they're corrupt, it's that they're incompetent and they don't do anything.
Well, that's another thing I keep saying to the Trump people is like, Trump is going to keep, heroin out of the country coming across the border. I'm like, government can't even keep heroin out of their own prisons.
Yep.
How are they going to keep fentanyl out of the country?
Yep.
Again, the problem is the war on drugs.
It's also pretty funny about the war on drugs. People say, if we legalize all drugs, they're going to be sold in vending machines and people are going to be overdosing and dying in the streets. And I'm like, funny, because it was like that for 200 years up until the 1960s, and we didn't see that happening.
Yeah.
That's something those drug warriors forget about, is that for many years you could buy drugs like heroin and cocaine literally over the counter.
Prior to 1913, kids could walk into any drugstore and buy heroin and cocaine.
Yeah.
Yeah, heroin being illegal had more to do with them wanting to punish Bayer during World War I.
Yeah.
Than it did with anything else, because they were basically trying to put Bayer out of business, and so they made heroin illegal, and they took their patent away for aspirin and made it generic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, William Jennings Bryan. I make a quickie on it though. There's just so much with that man.
Yeah, if I recall correctly about William Jennings Bryan, like didn't he, I heard he died shortly after the Scopes trial, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard rumors that the reason why he died was because he worked himself up into a religious fervor, that he basically stressed himself out to death, basically.
Well, that's how it's portrayed in Inherit the Wind.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. He had just, in reality, he had just told his wife he was tired and he was just like mostly sleeping the next few days and then died. So who knows?
Yeah. He probably had something that was going on and he didn't realize how serious it was, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be the case that, the stress of the Scopes trial didn't do him any good and it might have exacerbated it, but it's probably not just going up into a religious frenzy and just
Yeah,
until you explode.
to be fair, if I recall correctly, because I remember reading about the Scopes monkey trial, and if I recall correctly, William Jennings Bryan and Clarence Darrow, like, despite what the film Inherit the Wind pointed out, none of them were like these insane, religious fervors. Like, if I recall correctly, while yes, William Jennings Bryan was a creationist, really he took on the job mainly because, like all prosecutors, like, well, it's technically against the law, so I gotta enforce the law. And same thing with Clarence Darrow. He wasn't like this staunch atheist, that wanted to prove, creationists wrong. He just did that because he was a lawyer. He's
Well,
doing his job.
they were specifically trying to get that law tested.
Yeah.
Was that could you? Because Brian was on the side of, no, this is religion. This is the community. Basically, the same, the same justification they have for obscenity laws. And Darrow was like, well, no, this is a free speech issue.
Yeah.
And Scopes basically volunteered to be arrested. The whole point being so Scopes could lose the trial so they could appeal it and take it to the Supreme Court and get a ruling on it. And of course, it didn't work out that way. The appeals court overturned it on a technicality.
Yeah, fun fact, that's something they don't teach you in the history books about Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy versus Ferguson was actually meant to be an operation, and guess what? And guess who was in league with it? The railroad companies. They hated the Jim Crow laws because it made their policy inconvenient. They were trying to take it to court, and
yeah, they did that specifically so it could be taken to court and going up to the Supreme Court.
And I think you mentioned it that they came very close to winning, but unfortunately the court had a well-respected judge who unfortunately was a lunatic racist, and because he was because at the time he was very well respected, when he said no, they gotta be separate at all costs, they were like, yep, okay, we'll just have to go with that then.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, that's the thing I hate about with some of those YouTube lawyers and all that, like Legal Eagle, or that other guy, that one black guy I was showing you about, the guy that wears the contact lenses, is that the problem is that they always focus on, well, what does the law say, when they should be thinking, should this even be a law to begin with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the legalist mindset.
Yep. It's one pretty thing is that, it's one discussion that never gets brought up too, is that a lot of people talk about, like the booby trapping property and how you can't booby trap your property, that's against the law. And some people have brought this up. It's like, well then how come big banks are allowed to put in die packs on their money? That's technically a booby trap.
Yeah, but they're not designed to hurt the individual, I think, is the distinction. They're designed to mark the money and make it so they can't spend it. Are you there? Did you flake out? Did I flake out? Am I still here? Am I still going?
I mean, the whole thing with booby trapping, my personal opinion on it is that it should be one of those things where there shouldn't be a universal law around it. It should be treated as a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, like, and not to mention the original thing that brought up, let's be real here. It wasn't like those guys were innocent, urban, explorers. They flat out admitted, yeah, we were there to rob the place. And my personal philosophy is that if you're entering someone else's property without their permission and for the express purpose of, violating their rights, then you know what? You kind of forfeit, your right to not be hurt.
But I think they were looking at the bigger issue of, what if it was, a firefighter or a search and rescue person or something like that?
Which I say, don't think about that, because that's how bad laws get passed.
Yeah.
Yeah, It's what if it was a blind orphan? What if it was a sweet little innocent girl and all that? It wasn't a sweet innocent little girl. It was a robber trying to rob the house. And it's pretty funny because apparently when the judge sentenced the guy that did it, and he said, I'm going to make sure that you learn your lesson. Reportedly, he later told an interview, yeah, I did learn a lesson back then. I should have raised the booby trap shotgun a little higher so it would have taken out the guy's head instead of his leg.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hey, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard, that whole thing with shoot, shovel, and shut up with endangered species. I've heard from some people say it does happen with self-defense too. While it's not as common, apparently in some of the more rural areas, there are cases of, of people trying to commit a crime and they get shot by the property owner and die. And, because they don't want to go to jail, they just don't report it to the police. So then years later, they find the guy and they're like, wow, what happened to him? You know? Yeah, the whole thing about turning it into our own personal NKVD. Yeah, that's why I don't like to defund the police people, because it's like, listen, you guys are not against against getting rid of the police. You just want to replace them with, the People's Black Liberation Asian Peacekeeping Force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say again, I do sympathize with like the Secret Service when they're like, oh, gee, we don't think we can turn over the J6 tapes. We don't think we can turn over this information about the J13 assassin. Okay, how about we withhold your funding until you do?
Yeah.
Because Congress can do that. They have the power of the purse.
Oh, yeah. That's another thing I would like to do. I would like to make it a universal law that can't be overturned. The rule is, if any politician is anti-gun and they say, why do you need to defend yourself? They automatically get their Secret Service protection revoked. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just copying that one link from Ronald Sheckle to take it out. Legia Miller. Don't know who that is.
If I could draw, that's one political cartoon I would draw. If I could draw, I would draw a picture of a politician going, I don't understand why an average civilian would need an automatic rifle for defense. I don't carry a gun and I'm not in danger of my life. And then he's surrounded by heavily armed security guards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many of them are. It's like all these Hollywood people, they're like, you don't need guns to protect yourself. You got the police. It's like, well, then why do you go around with armed bodyguards?
Yeah, I know Rosie O'Donnell got called out for that a long time ago when when she's like, I don't get why you have guns. You don't need guns to defend yourself. And then someone exposed, you do realize your bodyguard is a concealed carrier and he carries a gun with him. And then she tried to pull the whole, oh, well, that's different.
Rules for thee, not for me.
Yeah. That's another thing, too, I find so funny about socialists and, left-wing thing in general. It's like, how come very rarely do we actually see genuine people, be socialists, and it tends to come from the more elite people, I mean, yeah,
because
there's some
that's what it's about. It is elitism. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing too.
We could easily defend our country and defend our borders with a much, much smaller army. We don't need to stomp around the world being the world's bullies, Well, it's not within our country, but it's in our country's interests. Well, maybe you shouldn't have so many damn interests.
Yeah. That's the thing I get, because when I bring up the F-35 aircraft, that's the thing that can never seem to get past those people's state, because people say, well, it's actually a good plane, it can do this and that, and it's really effective, and they still ignore my point. It's like, well, yeah, it's a good plane and it's good at doing its job, but how does this actually keep America safe, And people are like, well, what do you mean by that? It's like, because this is not a weapon designed to protect America. This is it's a weapon designed to fly into an enemy territory and drop a bomb without being detected. That's not a weapon of defense. That's a weapon of aggression.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess it's time to wrap it up. Got anything else you gotta get off your chest?
No.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. Thanks to Sid for joining earlier. Apologies again to all the Rumble people, but it looked like, I don't know what the problem was, but it looked like getting off a Rumble solved it. So hopefully that won't be the case next time and the full stream will be on Rumble. But thanks everyone.